talk to you just about some upcoming trends. Where are we now and what can we do about it in terms of supporting you in this process? So I'm going to share my screen and if I can just get a thumbs up or verbal confirmation from Jessica that you can see it, that'd be great. Awesome. Okay, so not as many visuals, but just to put something up there to keep us focused. Again, my name is Stephanie Espina. I'm Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Adelphi University, and happy to have the conversation about how we can navigate the college admissions process together in this really unprecedented year. So I kind of framed this with questions that I've been getting from a lot of students and parents and just the recurring questions, and wanted to dig this or dive into this a little bit deeper. And certainly leave some room for questions. Want this to be more of a discussion for sure. But the first question is, how have colleges responded to the pandemic? And there are a variety of responses and certainly a variety of different formats that colleges and universities are adopting for their current students on their campuses. And this has impact, of course, on how to visit a campus and availability and access to you, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But different campuses are exploring different models. So at Adelphi, for example, we have a couple of different modalities in terms of how students are learning. So we have a hybrid model where some students are in person taking classes that are, of course, smaller in size. We have students that are taking courses online, but still living on campus and maybe taking a mix of online and in-person classes. And then we might have students that are completely online. So we really have a mix of opportunities here. And then typically what I've seen across a number of campuses that's common coming up is that just after the Thanksgiving break, students will be completely online after that point. So the fall semester has been definitely trial and error, and certainly a lot of planning has gone into really just rolling out a safe fall plan for students. And again, every campus is different in terms of how they're handling, the safety precautions on campus. And I just received an update actually from Adelphi this past week that we've been able to maintain less than 1% of positive cases on campus. So I know it may seem restrictive, and certainly there's a lot of rules to follow, but I think in the end, it's definitely worth it. Many students that are tuning in today are abiding by different guidelines and different types of models at their own high schools. So definitely the same concern and certainly the same priorities at a college and university campus. So what visit opportunities are available? What does that mean for you as a student in terms of how colleges and universities are responding? So there are so many ways to engage now, and virtual, in my opinion, is definitely here to stay. It's going to probably be a complement to the in-person opportunities that colleges and universities will offer. But in terms of how to engage and visit schools, there's a lot of things to think about this year. One, how can I get there? Is there already kind of a distance between you and that school? And just even getting there and maybe having family members or supporters take you to these college visits is already a challenge, regardless of what kind of year we've had. So one, it's just getting there, right, and making the plan. Two, our campus is open to visitors. So every college university will have their own visit policy. So you want to check in with those individual schools. At Adelphi, for example, we are accepting in-person tours. They are limited, so we require students to pre-register for them. And we do have a limited number per hour. So the goal is to not have any crowds on campus and make it very individual and have families feel safe when they are visiting campus. So we do have student-led tours, one-on-one, that are available per hour. And we do have set times in which you can sign up. And then we have a self-guided tour option. So you can actually come to campus, navigate our campus through a particular application that will give you instructions on how to download and navigate it. And it's not student-led, so you wouldn't have anyone personally guiding you, but you can navigate campus at your leisure. So those are two examples of some in-person options that I'm sure other schools are also offering, but you want to check in with those individual schools. There are some schools that are saying, unfortunately, we're not accepting any in-person visitors for the fall. So again, you definitely want to check in on those policies. Now, another layer to visiting campuses is the virtual layer. So virtual tours are definitely very common right now and highly popular, actually, I would say. The virtual tours can be found on websites. If you're going to the admissions websites of the different schools, sometimes they're right on the homepage, very easy to find. And some of those are kind of like self-navigated virtual tours. Something that I've also seen that we do at Adelphi is actually daily live virtual tours. So we have students actually walking you through our virtual tour as if you were on campus. So you still have that engagement, you still have someone live speaking to you about the school and kind of giving you that information that they would have given you if you were there on campus. So that's something to keep in mind, that there are some live virtual options. And again, just keep in mind some patience is needed for this year. So maybe the fall isn't a realistic time for you to visit, but fast forward to spring, maybe spring is definitely a better time to start planning your college visits. However, we can share information with you from the college perspective, we're willing to do. So if it's additional information you can't find, if it's reaching out to the admissions counselors particularly, we highly encourage you to connect with us during this time. And I'll speak for many colleges and universities in that we're willing to jump on a Zoom call, Google Meets, whatever it is, Skype. We're using our cell phones to call you. We can really be personalized and try to answer as many questions as possible along the way. And there's so many ways to reach us and ways to connect. And if you prefer just a traditional phone call, traditional email, we are totally open to that as well. You do not need to be on Zoom or need to be on camera if you don't need to be. So we are open to the variety of communication. So another topic that's come up quite often this year is the test optional movement, I would say. Thousands of colleges and universities this year have gone to a test optional policy, and many colleges and universities have already been test optional. So there may not be as many changes for those schools this year, but the options of applying to a school that don't require SAT or ACT have definitely increased. So that is great news for a student, because if you are adamant about taking the SAT, ACT, one, we want you to be safe. We want this to be a safe environment for you in the testing day or however you're taking the test. But two, it kind of takes away the pressure. So if you are going to take the test, and again, you're adamant about taking it, you've prepped for this, just know that it's an option. You want to expand your options by doing that. You're not necessarily, bound to do it. You don't have to do it, but certainly know that there's a lot of colleges that are not going to be accepting the SAT, ACT as a requirement. What that means is that students can apply and really focus on their academic profile, their GPA, their course rigor, their grade trend. So anything that can give us clues as to your academic potential will be used to make a final decision in admissions and also with scholarship. And I can't speak for every single college's policy. This is another, follow-up that you need to do individually with schools. But the idea is that SAT, ACT is not something that will prevent you from earning a college scholarship, for example. So really, admissions and scholarship consideration can be done with just your transcript and other supporting materials. So holistic review is definitely something that a lot of colleges, if they haven't already, will be adopting, which means they're looking at the whole candidate. They're looking at your interests, they're looking at your essay, they're looking at the letters of recommendation, your resume. All of these things will come together. So really explore the different test optional requirements at the schools that you might be interested in. And again, if you're taking the test, just have a little bit less pressure on yourself, knowing that if you do well on these tests, great. It could still be part of that academic profile for admissions and scholarship consideration. But if you don't, or if you don't feel comfortable taking these tests, you do have options. And the reason a lot of schools have moved to test optional, if they weren't already, is to really understand that students were lacking access to testing this year. So it's definitely not equitable to require SAT and ACT, but again, it's just an optional layer to the process this year. And a lot of schools that are fall 2021 test optional will probably be test optional long-term, but that announcement will probably be forthcoming. So I know a lot of schools are working on making this more long-term policy. Finally, just a couple of notes on this. How can I afford college? This is a huge question for students trying to navigate the process. So, my biggest piece of advice is thinking about all kinds of schools. So you're thinking about state schools, maybe community college, you're thinking about private schools. Really don't limit yourself to what kinds of schools you're applying to, because you have the option, if you're not applying early decision, so not a binding decision, you have the option to really see at the end of the acceptance phase, who's accepted you, what your scholarships are looking like, what your total cost of attendance is looking like, assuming you've submitted your FAFSA and financial aid forms for consideration. And you can lay out, what your total cost of attendance would be at various schools. And, coming from the private school standpoint, a lot of students are surprised sometimes of how much scholarship and financial aid could actually cover that sticker price. So my biggest recommendation is don't limit your options. So again, keep an open mind. Don't even think just regionally, think broad. because you really want to, again, have options when you're weighing out the different acceptances and different routes you can take. So typically for this past year, especially this past spring with the seniors coming in for the fall into college, there was a lot of sensitivity for changes in finances and requests for reconsiderations and all of that. So from the college university standpoint, there was a lot of empathy needed and certainly a lot of digging needed just to see how we can support students during this time. And scholarships are definitely a great way to knock off that cost of attendance. And then a lot of colleges have revisited their financial aid policies. So aside from federal aid, which is pretty much out of our control, what we can control is what's called institutional aid. How much support can the institution give you for need-based consideration? So given the pandemic, schools are definitely revisiting that and saying, how can we give more to students, understanding that this is a difficult year for a lot of different families. So just keep in mind that there is definitely attention to this, and any questions you have about affordability can be asked. Ask an admissions counselor. We have a financial aid team. A lot of colleges and universities have both of those offices, and certainly just as you would be counseled on the application, we want you to be counseled on financial aid awareness. So those are kind of the top questions in a nutshell between a 10-15 minute limit. So open to answering any questions you guys have. And of course, you'll have them throughout the program. We have a lot of great speakers today. So again, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Stephanie. That was great. I think that's great insight and great information. I definitely think that virtual is here to stay. For my job, I do work in recruitment for colleges. And so I do see a lot of the transition happening over into virtual. So we do have one question. It says, how will interviews occur this year?
Yeah, so I can speak for my campus that all interviews and even appointments with like my admissions team, for example, will be virtual. Okay. So our honors college, they're performing their interviews virtually. For our joint degree programs, interviewing virtually. It's a little bit easier in most cases. Not every student, finds virtual to be very convenient. Sometimes it's not convenient, and we understand, it's really not 100% accessible. If there are any issues or any certain accommodations that you might need, whether it's a particular date, time, definitely make those specifications when you're requesting an interview, whether it's a requirement for a program or maybe just an optional interview. So be very clear about that date, time that might work best for you, where you're in an environment that you would have good access to that. But most interviews, to my knowledge, and other colleges can jump in, or you can check in with the colleges you're interested in, would be virtual.
Okay, another question from Jasmine. It says, what do you recommend is the best way for a sophomore to start preparing for college?
This is a great question. Actually, I was asked this question on a panel Thursday. So it's never too early, honestly, because when you're starting your high school path from first year, your freshman year up to senior year, you're working hard in class, right? So we're looking at first year, second year, third year grades when we're making decisions. So it's never too early to think about, how this translates to college consideration. But sophomores have the opportunity to take a look at those enrichment programs. A lot of colleges and universities have early enrichment programs, whether it's a summer pre-college program, for example, where you can earn college credit, maybe live on that campus for 2 or 3 weeks. You can even do this abroad. There's plenty of opportunities to do that abroad if you're thinking ahead. If you're looking at different programs or specific niche audience programs, there's definitely a lot out there if you do the research. For example, at Adelphi, we have a Hispanic Community Partnership Program, which is over the summer. This summer, we did it virtually for about 3 days. And it's a free program designed for the Hispanic student community. So, that's a program that you can say, wow, I can participate in that. It's free, it might be of interest to me. So right. Sophomore year, you can definitely explore those types of opportunities.
Oh, okay. Another question we got, and I know we have to wrap up, but due to the current situation, will the amount of students accepted be lowered?
I don't think so. I think a lot of colleges and universities, we're looking to admit students. Admission means that we're looking to admit, right? But in general, I think a lot of schools have seen, kind of just slight dips in enrollment for various reasons. If students are choosing elsewhere or maybe taking a gap year, I've heard that is a big trend, or just students that are waiting maybe to start in the spring or start a later term. So all in all, again, check individually with colleges, but I have not heard anything about acceptance rates, getting more selective this year in particular. The one thing I will say is that with test optional admission, that is definitely, kind of a selective layer in general, where we'll have to dig a little bit deeper. It's not going to be, clear cut necessarily. So we have to do more work on our end for test optional review to really identify candidates that we think would be very successful on our campuses.
For sure. And there was a great question here about what would the colleges mainly be looking for on your transcript. So we do have that in there. There's a number of questions in there. So if you want to go in the chat box before you log off, that would be great.
We'll definitely do that. Yes. There's a lot of good questions. Transcript, I mean, very simply, we're looking at your courses. We're looking at your course performance, looking at your grade trend. Have you increased each year? Have you maintained, or have you maybe declined, but possibly with context? Maybe there's good reason for that. We look at pretty much any clues that we can take away that can help us understand that you would be able to take advantage of resources and really succeed at our college or university.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. That was great. And there are plenty of questions waiting for you in the chat.
All right, I'll be diving into the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. So up next, we have choices, choices, choices. How do I choose? With Dr. Mel Douglas. He's the president of Barbara-Scotia College. Dr. Melvin Douglas is the 24th president of Barbara-Scotia College in North Carolina. A native of Harlem, New York, he has earned his degrees from Vinicius University, Tuskegee University, Morgan State University, NYU, Columbia, and Harvard University. Dr. Douglas did postdoctoral studies at Clare College in Cambridge University, England, and the Goethe Institute, Germany. He was also selected as a Japan Fulbright Memorial Scholar. Dr. Douglas is the author of Black Winners, A History of Spingarn Medalists from 1915 to 1983. That is incredible. That is a extensive academic history. So welcome, Dr. Douglas. It's an honor to have you with us today. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, hold up. There you go. Good morning.
You are happy to be here with you. It's such a privilege to share with students who are interested in going to an HBCU.
Yes, definitely. So I will let you take it away from here.
Okay. I'm the 24th president of Barbara-Scotia College. We're located in North Carolina, and as it was stated previously, I am a proud graduate of Tuskegee University. When I went there, it was called Tuskegee Institute. 2 years after I graduated, they changed it to Tuskegee University. You may know something about that school from the standpoint that George Washington Carver was a scientist there and did work with the peanut and the sweet potato. At the time, the president was Dr. Booker T. Washington. And you know about the Tuskegee Airmen who fought in World War II very bravely as pilots. And then, of course, you know about the Commodores, Lionel Richie. Well, maybe you don't because they're not as popular, today. But they were my classmates while I was at the school. Just want to share with you that there are about 5 reasons I chose to share with you why you should attend an HBCU. One of the reasons that HBCUs provide a connection to Black history. My own school, Barbara-Scotia, where I'm the president, is 154 years old. It started out as a school for the daughters of former slaves. And one of its graduates is Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. She was one of the most influential women actually one of the most influential persons in the 20th century. She was the advisor to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Also, the historical connections we all know as it relates to Dr. Martin Luther King, who went to Morehouse. And of course, Thurgood Marshall, who was on the United States Supreme Court, the first Black. In fact, had it not been for him litigating uh, the idea of blacks going to school with whites would not have been so successful during the 1950s. So we see that HBCUs allow one to be connected to Black history. The other thing that we find that HBCUs celebrate Black culture, um, African American experiences, such as music, dance, the arts, as well as literature. Uh, it is mind boggling to go to an HBCU and go to a homecoming. It is so much different than the homecomings that exist at other schools. And believe me, I should know. I went to 2 HBCUs and 4 predominantly white schools, Harvard and Columbia University and New York University. And even though they have nice homecomings, it's not like an HBCU. To use the words of young people, it's off the chain, it's off the hook. And those kinds of experiences you really need to have. It grounds you, it connects you to the school, your classmates, and as well as the cultural experience. Dr. Du Bois, who graduated from Fisk University in Harvard, he calls it the Black world. You're in an environment where everybody in that environment basically looks like you. There's a connection, a spiritual connection, a secular connection. So it's a good place to be in order to celebrate Black culture. The third reason why I think that you should attend, or one should attend, an HBCU is because of its outstanding programs. We have programs that many non-HBCUs don't have. And we also offer classes or programs in STEM. For example, my own school, Barber Scotia, we have a program in renewable energy. We give a degree in that area. Howard University and Morgan State University, they have made connections with Microsoft, and they work very closely in that area with them. Howard University, for example, they have a medical school, and they've had a medical school for many, many years. Black doctors were trained at Howard, as well as Meharry, which is another HBCU, School of Medicine. And most of our physicians came from those 2 schools. Both schools are very well known and renowned for their medical professionals. Another thing that we should talk about in terms of HBCUs is that they provide a supportive environment. And what do I mean by that? As I said, I've gone to a lot of schools, and many of them did not have the kind of support that I received at Tuskegee. Not only support from the faculty and the staff, but support from the administration. I remember for the first time seeing an African American as president of a college when I was there. He was a graduate of not only an HBCU, but he went to Harvard and he went to the University of Chicago, which put in my mind that Harvard was not out of reach for me. When I was at Tuskegee, I did not think about going on to graduate school, believe it or not. I just wanted to get out of Tuskegee after my 4 years and go to work as a teacher. But one day a professor stopped me in the hallway and said, "Douglas, what are you going to do with the rest of your life?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to be a teacher." He said, "Do you think about graduate school?" And I said, "Nah, I don't know." And he said to me, "You're smart enough to get a PhD." And at that point, he began to nurture me and see to it that I went to graduate schools and eventually Columbia University, where I received a doctorate degree in sociology and history on a full academic scholarship. I didn't have to pay a dime. So that is the kind of nurturing that we have. Also, we have a kind of network. This is number 5. We have a networking system that is second to none between the alumni associations and the faculty and the sororities and fraternities. There's a lot of networking that goes on. I'm a member of one of the first African-American fraternities that was established on a Black college campus, and that was Howard University. And that is the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And that, to me, has helped me along the way as it relates to making the kinds of connections that I need in order to get to the point where I am now as president of an HBCU. For example, let's say, for example, at Barber Scotia, we have something called Dinner with the President. That happens every month. And all of the students that come to the dinner, and they are required to come, they have to wear a tuxedo. They have to wear a black tuxedo, bow tie, and the ladies have to wear gowns. And in that environment, we talk about their careers and we talk about their studies and we make those kinds of connections. So I do hope that you consider an HBCU when you decide to select a college. I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. I love hearing about that. I did not go to an HBCU, but I've always heard great things from the people that I know that did go. So maybe for a graduate degree, we'll see about that.
Hey.
Yeah, so Simone saying that was amazing. Sandra says, thank you. A great information that you shared. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat about HBCUs. Okay, one, Elijah says, what programs do they have that stand out from other types of schools?
Well, one thing, like for example, Tuskegee has an aerospace engineering program. Very few schools have that.
Very few.
So that's just one example of what they have that other schools may not have.
Okay, and CJ wants to know, are there any HBCUs with good theater programs that you know of?
Good computer programs?
Good theater programs.
Oh, theater. Oh my God, Howard University.
That's a great.
Oh my, great. In fact, the young man who played was it Black Panther?
Yeah, Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, he went to Howard University. I mean, Howard is the place to go for theater. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Great. All right. One more question says, what kind of programs does your school have for graduate school?
Well, we don't have one. We don't have a graduate school. We just give the bachelors of arts or science. And that is because we want to make sure that our programs are very, very strong on the undergraduate level. So we don't stretch ourselves financially in that regard.
That makes sense. So in regards to undergraduate degrees, someone says, do any HBCUs include a mathematician degree? And if so, can you provide a little more detail?
Well, Howard does. Howard has a wonderful math program. Howard gives a PhD in mathematics. So I would look at Howard for that kind of study. It's a very strong program. In fact, if I'm not and North Carolina A&T. Yes, the first Black astronaut. He was a graduate from A&T, and then he went to MIT to study. His name was Dr. Ron McNair. So yes, A&T would have a wonderful program in terms of mathematics. And I believe Spelman has a very strong program too, the all-female college in Atlanta, one of the most famous HBCUs in the United States.
Definitely is. It definitely is. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Douglas, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, and now we're going to hear from our next guest on College Choices, Claire Fitzgibbons, the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Hofstra University. And she's going to give you some more insight into what you can expect from Hofstra if you're planning to go local, if you live on Long Island, and other things that Hofstra has to offer. So welcome, Claire.
Hey, hey.
Hello. Good morning.
So I get to follow Dr. Douglas, which is
Yes.
no small feat in and of itself, but I am hoping to kind of build upon his thoughts and talk more broadly about building your college list, what resources you have, and a couple of kind of key points that I find to help students out. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint here. And feel free to take notes or to take screenshots as well if you'd like. That's a-okay by me, no problems. So my first thought and the first thing that I want to talk about is looking at the resources that are available to you to build your list. I'm hopeful and I'm thinking that most of you are probably pretty much done building your list at this point. You may be, maybe you have a list of 3 schools that you're applying to. Maybe you have a list of 30 schools that are on your list. But I'm guessing that you're probably kind of finishing up that phase. Not the intrepid sophomore that we have on the call, but most of your seniors are probably pretty much done. The first thing that I would do is look around you. Attending a Collegeology or other session like this is a wonderful way to hear about schools that you may not otherwise know about. You heard a little bit more about HBCUs, and I could tell the questions there had you thinking and saying, "Ooh, let's add this school, let's add that school, let's add the other school." And I think that's a wonderful and very healthy thing. Look around you as well in your local community. Is there a friend that you trust? Is there someone else in your high school that you say, "Oh, gee, that person has interests like me and maybe did the same activities, wants to study the same thing that I did. Where did they go to school?" Same thing with your trusted teachers, family members, friends, your larger community. They probably have some advice for you as well. If your community, if you are around the Thanksgiving dinner table, well, maybe we may not be that this year, but as you're interacting with folks in the larger environment, something tells me whether it's on a Zoom call or those treasured in-person experiences we get, there's probably a lot of, "Oh, you're a senior, you're a junior, where are you thinking about applying to? Have I got the school for you?" It gets a little old hearing that quite often, but that's a great resource to learn about schools that you may not otherwise know about. Take just a second and think, how many colleges are there in the United States? I'm going to give you a second to make your guess. If you guessed 10,000, that's a little bit, that's a lot. If you guessed 5,000, you're not far off. If you guessed about 4,000 to 4,500, that's about right. So the good news is there's one out there for you that fits your criteria. There's probably more than that fits your criteria. Keep your ears open. Go to your high school college placement office. If you have access to some sort of college search website like Naviance or the Princeton Review or Niche or any of those online resources, oftentimes they'll ask you to submit a profile and ask you questions like we're going to come to in a second to help kind of guide you towards schools that you might be interested in. One major piece of advice: if a school keeps coming up in your conversations or your web searches or throughout your college search life, and it's one that you had either said, no, not that one, or had said, "I don't know anything about this school, I'm going to leave it off the list for now," but it keeps showing up, check it out. See what's going on. It sure might have something for you. The other great news is colleges will come to you too. If you are a high school senior this year, more than likely, I'm guessing you're getting some college mail, maybe not as much as in past years, but you're probably getting some college mail. You're definitely getting a lot of college emails, and that's a good thing. That helps expose you to the colleges that are out there that you may not otherwise know about. So those are your resources. The other thing that I think makes a lot of sense is to start narrowing down your list too. No one wants to apply to 4,500 colleges. No one expects you to. No one thinks you should. But you'll probably get to that point where you're looking at and thinking pretty solidly at something like probably 10 to 12 to 15 schools. So what kinds of things should you know about yourself and what you want in a college that can help narrow down that list? Number one, and this is a big one for a lot of students, location. Are you a person that wants to be in the heart of it, in the thick of the city, living downtown? That helps narrow your list down a lot. Are you someone who wants to be out in the middle of nowhere? That helps you narrow down a lot. Are you looking somewhere in the middle? And that helps as well too. So location is a big factor. It probably makes sense to do a little bit of soul searching and a little bit of looking introspectively about yourself, and not only what you would desire for these factors, but how these factors are also going to help propel your career. That's the whole goal about college, right? Is to propel your career. So does having a location kind of like Hofstra's in the suburbs, easy access to New York City, but still about 25 miles east of New York City, that helps have a nice, quiet suburban campus that you can relax in, but access to internships, access to New York City, networking, all that kind of good stuff that is the center of a lot of different industries. Same thing with size. Are you interested in a medium-sized college, a large college, a small college? They all have their different experiences, their different footprints, their different environments. So where does your desire fit? Is there a major that you're looking at and you know that you're interested in math, you know that you're interested in theater, so if your school doesn't have that, it's off the list. You also want to think about the student body that you'll be learning with. Are you interested in attending an HBCU with its traditions and college and campus and the student body that holds? Does that appeal to you or not? Those are things that can also help to narrow your college list or expand your college list, depending upon how you feel about that. Do you want the student body to be a large student body? Again, there are colleges with 20,000 students. There are colleges with 400 students. So you just kind of want to know where you stand and where you would feel comfortable and where you think you could thrive the most. Again, we're also talking about college in a way to launch your career. So you want to ask the college admission officers and just kind of follow up and say, especially if you know what you're interested in majoring in, hey, this is my major. Tell me how folks, how they transition into the proverbial real world with this major. Do they, what is their job placement rate? What is their average salary? Where do they go? Do they stick around this location? Do they go across the country? Kind of where do they go and what is their outcome? That's a really important question. And then last but not least, you'll probably have price or some sort of financial aspect on your college search and narrow down list as well. And that's okay. I would just let you know and encourage you, as we've heard already today, not to think necessarily about sticker price of an institution, but rather to keep asking questions. Sometimes you'll find that a private school, where oftentimes we think private and think big price tag, that might be the big sticker price. But when you add in scholarships, financial aid, so on and so forth, it may end up being a price that is somewhat similar, pretty darn close to what you might pay at a state institution. And you may find that throughout looking at these other factors on your list, you may find that you get a stronger foundation to launch your career at one school or the other. So again, as I think Stephanie said, as she started off our day, thinking about price and being price sensitive is fine, but ask the follow-up questions. What is the average scholarship? How do I become scholarship eligible? What is the average out-of-pocket price that a student pays? And know that down the line, that financial aid is a lot more creative than you may think it is. So those are the factors to hopefully help you narrow down your college list. So now let's say you're down to having those 5 to 10, maybe 15 schools that you're really thinking about. Now what do you do? As we've already heard today, visit. Virtually or on campus, either way, but start to get a feel for, hey, this could feel right. You may find that all of the data for a school match up perfectly. The location is right where you want, the size is perfect, they focus on this major, but when you set foot on campus or when you visit virtually, it just doesn't feel right. And that's fine. The opposite could be true too. You may have one of your trusted advisors, oftentimes a parent, saying in your ear, hey, you really ought to look at this school. Let's go. They have this virtual event. They are accepting in-person visitors. Let's go. You may find that that person is right, and you step onto that campus and it may not fit perfectly with your data and what you're looking for, but you might walk on campus and say, wow, this really does do it for me. This really, I think, is a strong fit. I'd also encourage you to join the mailing list. That's an easy click on your on an email to say, yes, please keep me in touch about events coming up, about major things, anything else that might be within the wheelhouse that the college wants to tell you. I'd strongly encourage you to hear more. You can always unsubscribe. You can always say, I don't need to know about this particular thing and skip that message. That's fine. But if you're interested and serious about a school, you might as well hear what they're having to say. Same thing with social media. We're all on Instagram. We're all on Snapchat, Facebook, so on and so forth. So that's a good place to find out what's going on and what is happening on campus. Again, come back to that trusted entourage of folks that are helping you build your list and narrow and walk through your college search. They, again, might have some good advice to say to help you see something within a school that you like, something that you weren't expecting, or something that you don't see. And again, as you're building this list, as you're narrowing this list, as you're looking at that, I always think of playing cards, that playing card hand of acceptances that you'll have in the spring of your senior year. Remember, this process is all about you. Your college search is different than everyone else's. So come back to what you want and what's going to be good for you. And there we have it. There's my content. It was quick. Hope you got some screenshots, and I'll take any questions that you might have too.
Definitely, that was very useful and great. A lot of things I know I took into consideration when I was making my decision, but we do have a lot of questions for you. So one comes from Ruby. She's a future physician. She says, Hofstra is definitely on the list, but I would like to know, what do Hofstra medical students do after graduating? Like, what employment opportunities do they have?
Cool. So let's take that phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, when you're thinking of a career as a physician, is to get yourself through the undergraduate portion, right? So that's the portion where we think of as a traditional college experience. That's 4 years, and you will study things like biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, and a whole bunch of fun stuff too. You will, and you'll have some exposure to medicine, but probably and mostly it will be more kind of creating the foundation for your medical, I should say, for your science curriculum. At the end of your senior year of college, of that undergraduate experience, really during your junior and senior year, you will launch another college search. This year, though, you're not looking for a bachelor's degree, you're looking for a medical school. And you'll do the same kind of things that you're doing right now. You'll look for schools, could be Hofstra's, could be across the country, and you'll look for the school that fits your personality, fits what you're interested in studying in medicine, and take the MCAT, go on interviews, all that kind of good stuff. So then hopefully that gets you into medical school. Hofstra's medical school in particular, as the students are graduating, they really go to a lot of different places. This past year, I think they did about 23 different specialties. A number of them stayed with Northwell, which is who our partner institution is, but a lot of them, chose to go back home to California or to go to Rhode Island or what have you. So very varied experiences after graduating.
Thank you. CJ wants to know, what's the difference between Ivy League and prestigious colleges?
Great question. So it's kind of an interesting question. We know the Ivy League, right? We've heard of those schools and we think of Yale, Harvard, Princeton, so on and so forth. To be very frank, I don't know where the name originally came from. However, I think that it probably has to do with and may have to do with, I know at least at this moment, they're all in one athletic conference together. And oftentimes the schools that hang out in athletic conferences together have similar academic profiles, similar experiences. They might be similar-ish sizes. If you think of the Ivy League, let's think also, I'm guessing probably most folks know the SEC, the Southeastern Athletic Conference, the Big Ten, that is now like 15 schools or something crazy like that. Those athletic conferences oftentimes have their own reputations, and again, the schools in with them are very similar. So athletics aside, if we think of the Ivy League, they are schools that have very selective admissions and have very strong reputations. We hear about the near Ivies, which isn't an athletic conference, so that kind of goes out the window. But it's essentially what the outside world perceives them to be.
Right.
Which again is great and it's a great reputation, but it may not be the best fit for you. That's the catch, is that I always say that if you're at Harvard or you're at Hofstra, what you put into your education is what you're going to get out of the education. And Jessica, you can probably speak to this too. Yeah. If you go to school and all you do is sit in the seat and listen to the lecturer and you don't do any of your homework, you don't engage outside of the classroom, it doesn't matter where you go to school.
Yeah.
But if you're happy with your school, it fits you well, you're excited to talk to the professors, you're excited to go to clubs and organizations, you've got a home run that's going to be great for you, and you are going to grow and have a great foundation.
Absolutely.
No matter where.
So another great question from Jasmine. What is a good amount of colleges to have in your mind or on your top schools list?
Everybody has a different opinion about this one. I would probably say, as you're starting your research, if you're like in junior year-ish, I'd be about 15 schools, something like that. I don't, the right amount of schools to apply to, I would probably say under 10 personally, is my personal experience and opinion. Humbly, my children are still small, but I'm thinking about giving them a budget. Here is your application fee budget. You can do whatever you want with that amount of money. And if you get 3 applications, go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing. I would say under 10.
Got it. Yep, that's great. What if you were unsure of what career you want to follow?
I love it. I love it. That was me. I think that's awesome. One thing to watch for in your college application process is how that school treats undecided students. So as an example, and I shouldn't say treats, that's a weird word to use, how undecided students are admitted to colleges. As just one example, Hofstra, with very few exceptions, when you are admitted to Hofstra, you're admitted to any major. And I always make the joke, if every student says, I want to be a math major, we're going to have some issues and we're going to have some figuring out to do, but that'd be fine with us.
Right.
Luckily, they don't. They do a whole bunch of different majors. But then that also means for us that changing your major is super easy. Walk in, you sign a piece of paper, off you go to the other major.
Yeah.
There are other schools that say you need to apply to this major. You must apply to the School of Business when you're a senior in high school. And if you then want to change your mind and decide you want to be an engineer, you must then apply to the School of Engineering. So if you are truly undecided, ask that question and know what you're up against as you are coming to that school.
Yeah, that's my alma mater. That's how they have it set up. So directly apply to the business school, the liberal arts school, or whatever. So
which is great. If you know what you're majoring in, you're off and running. But if you're like me and changed your major 6 times, Would have been a lot of bureaucracy for me.
Exactly. So we do have a lot of questions for you left in the chat, but we do have to move on. So feel free to like answer them there. Some people have questions around specific majors, college outside of the US, or all these different questions. So I will leave that up to you. But thank you so much for joining us, Claire. It was great.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you too. Okay, so now we're going to hear from Doreen Davis, who is the Associate Director of Financial Aid and just celebrated 27 years at Nassau Community College. She is the recipient of the State University of New York's Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Professional Service. She's a staunch advocate in assisting parents and students with navigating the financial aid process and in finding resources available to finance their education. She's going to talk to you about FAFSA and just financial aid in general and how you can afford college. Good morning. Oh, you're muted. It's on you. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Director of Financial Aid at Nassau Community College and our President, Dr. Jermaine Williams, thank you for having us. And also thanks for the panelists. You have been great. I love some of the things and the questions that the students have been asking. Awesome.
Yes, so I will let you take it away.
Thank you. When you go ahead and, okay, once you select the college, the first thing that you need to do is complete a FAFSA. FAFSA you complete once a year, and October 1st is that magic date. October 1st of every year, the FAFSA is due. It's an application that must be done on a regular basis, like I said, and the FAFSA has 4 steps. Step 1 is basically your demographic information. This is where you would be entering your basic information, your name, your social security number, your address, and so forth. One of the major problems that we have is the social security number. The name must match what's on your birth certificate and your social security card. You can't use nicknames. These are problems because the system is going to check. There are matches that are placed through Social Security Administration and for the Homeland Security for those that are not a citizen, but is an eligible non-citizen. This is someone who actually has what's called a permanent resident card, permanent resident alien card. That needs to be reported as well. Before you actually start filling out the FAFSA, you need to have certain documentation with you. Be sure that you have your birth certificate. Be sure you have your social security card, because that will help you, and you'll double check to make sure that that information is important, because you have to be a US citizen in order to complete the FAFSA. You could be naturalized. This is a person who was not born in the US, was born in another country, but become a US citizen. That's considered naturalization. One of the problems that we have, because we're now checking data system against data system, for students who have been naturalized through their parents or other, they must notify Social Security Administration. The reason for that is when you complete the FAFSA, if you check that you're a US citizen, it's going to go to the Department of the Social Security Administration to verify it. The elements that are used to verify whether you're a citizen is your name, date of birth, and your Social Security. If any of those does not match, then it comes back to you, and also they notify the school that you're not a citizen. The reason for that is you have the documentation, but you have not updated it. It's very important that you do. TAP for the first time is verifying citizenship. So if it's not matched on the FAFSA, your TAP will not be matched. It actually will not be processed until they're able to verify that you're a US citizen. And that's from effective this year. So be sure that that's updated. The second, then you go to step 2. Step 2 is asking for the income information. The income information for your 21-22 is based on your 2019 tax return. That's considered prior year. The government has decided to do that because what has happened in the past, a lot of errors were made because students and parents were not familiar with filling out the FAFSA and how to read the tax return. So what they were doing, so the federal government decided to have the prior year, because that information is already stored on the federal database, and that's the IRS. So there is a measure that's called the IRS database retrieval, and you can use that, and that transfers the information directly onto the FAFSA, and it's called the IRS data retrieval. The information is transferred there, but you will not see that information for your own protection, but the school will get that information, and we will notify you once everything is processed, and that's a part of the packaging, but I'll go into that in a little bit later. Once you determine if you work, you must report it. If you work but did not file a tax return because you were not required to file a tax return, you still need to put that information on the FAFSA that you did not file. However, the income that you earn must be reported. If you're self-employed, if you make more than $400, you're required to file a tax return. The same information is asked. Then step 3, this is where we ask for, this is where we actually ask the student whether they are, this is where we determine whether the student is independent or dependent. First is, were you born before January? It's always January. And for the 21-22, were you born before January 1, 1998? Of course, most of you that are graduating will be answering no. So once you answer no to a series of questions, which is the first one, which will eliminate you, there's actually 45 to 57 question is all about independency. Once you answer no to one of these, you're considered independent. Once you answer yes, then you're required to report parent information. So most of you will be answering no to each of those, which means you're required to report parental information. And then step 4 is where you actually will be reporting your parental information. You'll start out with the marital status of the parents. And this is where it becomes tricky.
Hi, Ms. Davis.
Yes.
So we're actually going to start taking some questions because people have been dropping them in the chat.
Sure.
So the first question is, do you have to complete the FAFSA every year?
Yes, because that's how we determine your financial aid eligibility. And because we use, each year is different and we're looking at prior years. And for this year, it will be based on your 2019. And if there are extenuating circumstances where your income does not match because of loss of income or reduction, they can go back and speak to the financial aid counselor like myself, and we can reevaluate it based on your current situation. Okay,
perfect. Another question is, what is the maximum amount of financial aid a student can receive?
Well, their maximum and cap is that if you're eligible for the maximum tap, it's the tuition. It cannot exceed tuition. So NASA's tuition is $2,900. So the maximum tap would be that. And in terms of the Pell Grant, the maximum would be 63. I think I have it in my. The lower the EFC, which is 0, you want to have an EFC of 0 because that gives you the maximum Pell Grant. And that it doesn't matter whether you attend a Delphi, an SUB, Adelphi or Hofstra, the Pell is the same regardless. The only difference is TAP. TAP is tied to tuition only. So for Nassau, our tuition is less. Hofstra, it's higher. So that's where the difference would come in terms of your state aid. But federal aid, it's the same. Student loan for freshmen would be $5,500. It could be a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized. $3,500 is the subsidized portion and $2,000 the unsubsidized. The difference is subsidized, the government pays the interest while you're in school. The principal is deferred. The unsubsidized, the interest is actually accruing. If the student does not pay that interest, the principal, of course, is also deferred. And the interest rate today is 2.75, and that varies every July 1st, the new rate comes out.
Right.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
Another question was, how do I manage if my parents don't want to help me for college?
Okay. There are stipulations if the student, as I mentioned, when we determine who is independent and who is dependent, parents' refusal to provide information is not guaranteed financial aid, because parents are required to provide that information unless there are extenuating circumstances that can be documented. But just plain out refusing, the only option is the unsubsidized loan, and it will be, student will have to provide a letter from the parents that they actually refuse.
Okay. We have one more question. Can the amount of scholarship money I win reduce my financial aid package?
Yes. And the reason for that is how the donor actually stipulates the scholarship, the condition of the terms of the scholarship. For example, I have a scholarship that I've created in memorial of my mother and my mother-in-law. And so I made one stipulation that the student's scholarship should only go for covering books and fees. The reason for that is TAP only covers tuition. So if I have a scholarship that says, say $250 to Jane, I don't say anything about how it should be applied, that automatically will affect the tuition, because they will deduct that and reduce any state aid, because it cannot there's duplicity of benefits. It will reduce your state aid because it's going to net it against tuition if I don't specify that this should not go towards tuition. So when you get a scholarship, you need to read the criteria and the conditions of how those scholarship will apply and how it will affect your aid, because in some cases it will.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to end there. We have some other questions that were coming up in the chat, but we're going to share out the presentation that you guys intended to share with us today, so everyone can get the information and use it however you would like. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for joining us today with all this great information. I know that this is always a difficult conversation, but I think that you have plenty of resources and information available that is going to help everyone make the right decision for them. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
It was nice having you. All right, so now we're actually going to move into a topic around scholarships, which so many of you have been asking about. So we have the team from Footsteps to Follow to walk you through how you can secure scholarships and what those opportunities look like for you. We do have a part 2 of this session next week with more information to come, so be sure to come back next week when we go through some more detail. But for now, we're going to go through some scholarship insights.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth White, and thank you, Cedar Moore, for including us again in this event. We're delighted to be here with all of you. A few words about Footsteps to Follow. We are a self-funded, not-for-profit organization that's committed to reaching out and partnering with community organizations. In today's presentation, also known as scholarships, scholarships, scholarships. You'll get a lot of good information. You'll also hear just a little bit about what I feel is Footsteps' most satisfying activity. You'll hear from Regina Leader McGinnis. She's the co-chair of the Footsteps to Follow Scholarship Committee. So give me a moment while I share my screen, and then Regina, you could take it over from here. Okay, Regina.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I apologize for that. Thank you for spending some time with us as we talk a little bit about scholarships. It's our pleasure to be with you. And you may want to grab a pen or pencil, but you don't have to because we're going to send the list in the chat. Thank you, Ruth, for that introduction. Okay, scholarships.
Just
Certainly. Scholarships are real and they are important, and a lot of you have asked about them, so we're going to give you a little information. There are a few people that have their total cost saved to pay for college. And unless you plan on how to pay for college, your college choice before you accept, you'll wind up with more debt than you need to incur. With a little planning, this does not have to be you. Once you graduate from college, you want to start on your life and your goals, and you don't want to have to pay back, have a big amount of money to pay back. You want to maybe buy a car, move into an apartment, or just whatever goal you want to do. So why should I apply for scholarship money? Well, why shouldn't you? Scholarships are grants, they're free money, and you don't have to worry about paying them back. You don't have to have that big boulder pushing up, oh, I want to start my life, but I have to pay back this money. Okay, you look at all scholarship money as gifts because they do not have to be repaid. A loan you'll have to pay back, and you pay back over many years, and it can hinder your growth.
sorry.
That's okay. Be prepared to do a little legwork of your own. You know yourself better than anyone else, so you know your strengths, your gifts, and your talents, and what you like and what you don't like. Finding a scholarship is no different. You'll need to narrow down your options and select the things that best suit your talents. Like anything else you want, it'll require some work. I call it a part-time job because there's a lot of scholarships out there and you really have to be diligent. And you can ask people to help you, your parents, your aunties, your best friends. And it's a real challenge to get as much money as you possibly can so that you don't have to have the burden. When should I apply? Early and often. Some deadlines are as early as a year before you start college, but I've also found out that when you start high school in the 9th grade, you can start looking for some scholarships. You don't need to wait until your final decision on what college you're going to before applying for scholarships. Where do I start my search? Well, go with what you already know. Your local organizations, the fraternities and sororities, your civic organizations, your church, places where you frequent often, like McDonald's, Burger King, Walmart, Taco Bell. Especially if you work there, employees get preference. Your parents' job might have scholarships you don't know about. Your job might have scholarships you don't know about. Ask questions, network, talk to people. Your local funeral parlor, they may have it. It seems strange, but I've heard people getting scholarships from all different organizations. And the local organizations give you the most, in my opinion. So as a freshman going in, well, in your high school senior year, look around, look at your Rotary clubs, look at everything you possibly can, and just ask the question, do some research. Expanding what you already know, or who will help me. I feel that the guidance counselor in your school can be your best friend or should be your best friend come senior year. The reason I say that is they're going to be sending out your recommendations. Some schools, they send out your whole packet that would include your official transcript, your letters of reference, and whatever you give them. So it's important that you have a good relationship with them. You see them in the hallway, hi, how you doing? Make sure they know your name. Make sure they have your email. They are going to get scholarships on their desk, faxed in, emailed in, and if they know who you are and they have a relationship with you, they will remember you. Oh, let me send it to Karen, or let me send it to Rashida. Rashida's mom was just in my office today. Let me email it to her because I can't find Rashida. So it's important that you establish a relationship. A lot of students have told me, oh, my guidance counselor doesn't do anything. Well, it's your responsibility. You are the graduate. The guidance counselor has a job and is doing it. It's your job to exhaust them as a resource. Your local library has a reference section. The great part is they will find books for you and give you tips. Just ask for college scholarship information. Ask for help from anyone you can think of. People are eager to help you and they'll point you in the right direction. And if one person doesn't help you, ask someone else. Next slide, please. Okay, there are local scholarships and we should look at those first, such as the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the National Association of University Women, the Dreams Youth Scholarship, the United Way. Some of these things you may have not thought about as giving you scholarships, but you should look into them. More local scholarships. One that I have to point out on this page is the Footsteps. Oh, excuse me, one moment. I'm so sorry. Pardon me. One scholarship that I have to mention on this page is the Footsteps to Follow Scholarship. This is our 6th annual year that we'll be giving out scholarships to high school seniors. And it usually comes out on our website, which is www.footstepstofollow.org in February. So go to our website in February and look and see what we have to offer your application. And it's usually due on May 1st. This year, we are fortunate and blessed to give out 14 scholarships to high school seniors that have graduated. And we're going to include these lists in the chat, or we'll send them to you. Additional scholarships that you can check into. We've listed some such as Unigo, FastWeb, CAPEX. They basically all offer you the same information. So you just need to go on one. Fill out the information. You don't have to give all the information, but you want to give, as stated by some of the previous panelists, what your major is, what your interests are, and they will sort of narrow down information that applies to you. So they will come to you on a almost daily basis. So sign up for these scholarships. They're national, these are national scholarships. So it's a broader band of students competing. That's why I say the local ones are really good. These are good also, but you have a better chance doing local wherever you are, as opposed to national. It's just a national gives you a bigger, broader band of all the students in the United States. There are also websites to avoid. Not every site on the web is there to help you. Sites that require you to provide a credit card number, even if it says it's free and collected only to verify that you're not a robot, or to pay a fee of any kind, are really set up to get your information and sell it to a third party possibly. And they usually email you with an offer such as a credit card to help you with tuition. Don't bother with those. If there's a free site that also offers a chance to win money on a sweepstakes, that may be a scam. So be very careful with your information. DACA and undocumented students. The dream.us is a great website for you to check into. Your eligibility is based on where you live, not where you're going to school. All New York State residents should apply. And aside from that, Amazon gives hundreds of millions of dollars to this group. Are you ready to send your application? Check and double check all the rules. Make sure the application is complete. Having a checklist will help. Check off each item and make sure you've submitted everything. Applications that are incomplete are automatically rejected. So also have a second pair of eyes. Maybe have mom, dad, or your friends, whoever you can, to double check your information. They can do the checklist with you, or you can do it on your own. Send. Once you have submitted your application, go to the site again. Make sure that everything, in fact, was uploaded. Sometimes, you know, with all this technology, you may have thought you submitted your transcript, or you may have thought you put in all your recommendation letters, but you didn't. So just double check before you send. What else do I need to know? Prepare information so you are ready. Do not wait for others to get you prepared. Make another written checklist of what you need to get done. This is important. Identify who you're going to ask for recommendations. Remember, you're not the only person graduating, and your teachers will have most students in their classes asking them for recommendations. So start early. As soon as the semester starts, as soon as you can get a hold of a teacher, would you mind writing my recommendation? And that will help you out. Your intern / your work letter, have an idea of what you want them to say. So write a draft letter or make a resume. This way you have all your information, your dates and your times of when you worked and what you did, your extracurricular activities, whether it's sports, whether it's the band, whether it's working in a nursing home. Have all that information so that when your teacher is writing your recommendation letter along with hundreds of others possibly, yours can stand out because they're putting pertinent information about what you did and you can stand out. Same with the personal letters. Okay, this is our final slide, and this is Tupac Mosley, who was 17 in 2019. He graduated from Raleigh, Egypt High School in Memphis, Tennessee, and he was valedictorian despite becoming homeless in his sophomore year. The reason why we show this slide is to let you know that even though you have a lot going on, there's a lot of things maybe happening in your life, you can still pursue your goals and still press to get the things that you need, which is scholarship money to help you pay for your school. Thank you so much. And now we will have questions.
Yes, that was great. We have a lot of questions that came in. So I'll start with the top. It says, are there any scholarships for high school sophomores?
Yes, they are. If they go to the national websites like KPAX, FastWeb, they have scholarships for all students, but they're going to hold on to it till you get to college. So you can apply in your sophomore year, and they're going to probably hold on to it because remember, this is a college scholarship. So yes, there are scholarships for sophomores.
Perfect.
In college and in high school.
Yeah, in high school. Everyone, we are going to send out these slides, so you'll be able to get access to the links that they shared. I know they were asking for you guys to go slower, but there's plenty of resources, so you can go in and click them once we send it out to you guys. Okay. How early can you start applying for scholarship?
Apply early and often. You can apply now. Well, you have to wait till specific ones come out. Mm-hmm. But you can apply in junior year, as we said, sophomore year. But usually the scholarships start, the due dates are around November, December, and then they go into January, February. But you want to start looking now. Now, right. Go and bombard your guidance counselor. I know that this is a virtual school year for many of our students. So you're going to have to email, and you won't have access to your college placement lab or your guidance counselor face-to-face. So you're going to really have to be creative this year and really do extra searching.
Do the work, yeah. How do you know if you qualify for a scholarship?
Usually they have your qualifications listed in the application. So they'll tell you need a certain grade point average, or this is for sports, or this is for musicians. So you just read carefully. It's important. Take your time, read, and stay organized, and you'll be able to, narrow down the ones that you are qualified for.
Okay. Do you know of any specific scholarships around zoology or law students? We've got a mixed bag in here. Some people are asking for specifics.
No, I don't have those specific scholarships, but if you just go on the websites and just Google, I'm guaranteed you will find some, and you'll be surprised. And some schools will offer them for minorities, or if you're gifted in certain ways. So check your school website to see what scholarships they offer. Most of them at least offer a merit scholarship if you have a certain GPA. So you should hopefully be eligible for the merit scholarship to start with, and then go into specifics. Usually sometimes they ask you to complete a year with a certain grade point average, and they'll offer you even more scholarships. So you definitely want to spend time in the financial aid office once you do get accepted.
Right. Absolutely. All right, so we do have to wrap up, but there was one question that says, what scholarships can I apply for if I don't have any talent? So I think that goes towards your merit scholarship that you mentioned and those types of opportunities there.
Well, you have talent and you are smart and bright. That's why you're on this Collegeology with us, and that's why you are interested. Just go on and see what you qualify for as far as your GPA, as Jessica stated. That will be a grade point average. If it's a certain way, you can, there's no specifications. Sometimes if you're Indian and you're blind in the right eye, there might be a scholarship for that. Not to be facetious, but there are scholarships for just about anything, because if I had a specific sickness or ailment or what have you, I might decide, there's other students like me or other people like me, so I'm going to have a scholarship dedicated just for that. So
Right.
you don't have to have a specific talent. You have a talent because you want education. So just look and, like go to the library, utilize all your resources. But that's where the legwork comes in. You really have to, it's a part-time job. You have to look, diligently.
Definitely was. And anyone who's asking questions around like specific things that scholarships are looking for, definitely check the prerequisites. There's going to be a list of things that you have to meet in order to apply for it. So that type of information will be included for that specific scholarship. So check out the sites that we have listed in the deck that we're going to send out, and you'll be on your way. So thank you, ladies, for joining us today. This was great.
It was our pleasure. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. All right, so up next, we're going to hear directly from some current college students. As I've said before, I graduated last year, so I can provide an alumni perspective, but you may want to hear from some college students. So we are going to welcome Alexis Roberts, who is a senior at Siena College, located in Albany, New York, majoring in psychology with a minor in education. We're also going to welcome Kevin Velasquez, who is a sophomore computer engineering student attending Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. Jake Shebom, who is an undergraduate pre-law student at NYU studying politics and economics and is originally from East Meadow. And then Greer Adams, who is a graduate of St. Anthony's High School and is now a freshman at the State University of New York in Albany. Hi, guys.
Hello, hello, hello.
And this is going to be moderated by Vienna, so I'm going to let her take it away.
Hi. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm very, very excited to be here and listen from some of you on your thoughts and your experience in college. I graduated a while ago, so you guys are gonna have to refresh me and to give perspective on what it's like to be here during this COVID time for our panelists and those people listening at home. So the first question is going for all of you. And the question is, how was your transition from high school to college? Lexi, do you want to go first?
Sure. My transition from high school to college, though it was many, many years ago, it was a little bit hectic, but my school helped a lot, especially like the guidance counselors. They made sure that we found schools that we liked. They made us fill out applications. Even if we didn't know what we wanted to do and were undecided, they're like, okay, well, what are you looking for? They really worked with you to help you decide if it was about a location thing and what kind of experience you wanted. Like if you want to live on campus or if you wanted to commute, or what are your options, and try to like pick your interest. But my family had a big influence on my decision. So it was a little hectic at first, but it really has to do with your comfortability and just genuinely your preference and what you want to do. So once I pinpointed that, it wasn't super hard.
Thank you. Jake, do you want to go next?
Sure. I had kind of a difficult transition from high school to college. Honestly, it took a little bit of a toll on my mental health. So what I learned though is that kind of regardless of how your transition from high school to college is, it's really important to try to take advantage of all the resources at your fingertips. There's a ton of people that are looking to help you, that are looking to support you. I found a great like social network of friends, and I connected with a lot of great faculty and staff members on campus, and that really helped ease the transition. And, the first few weeks at college, I was not super excited to be there. I was not really loving it. And then I'm a junior now, so the start of my third year, I work in the admissions office as a tour guide, because I could not love my school more and I could not love being there more. So, I really have, it was a little bit of a difficult shift at first, but I really started to love it and now just couldn't be happier.
Thank you. Greer, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can. So my transition was kind of hard because I was online for the end of my senior year, so I basically did no work. And now it's just like a bunch of work being thrown at me because most of my classes are asynchronous, so it was kind of difficult, but I learned how to manage because I'm staying very organized because I bought an agenda, which is kind of sad, which I never did in high school, but like I did now. And it's okay. Like I'm doing okay.
It's gonna get better. Believe me, it's gonna get better. Kevin.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest hurdle was learning how I learn and how I can study, because I wasn't really used to learning material on my own during high school. But then when I got to college, I found that I had to go through the textbook and then retake notes and then try practice problems. So similar to Jake, I found like a group of friends I can work with, and I went to office hours. And so really just finding how you learn.
Thank you. I know, I think for me, that was the hardest thing, how do you learn? And then just applying that to your own schoolwork. The next question will be for Greer. Why did you choose your particular college? And if you can let us know what college is that?
So I chose my college because I was originally going to Rutgers in New Jersey, but then since due to the pandemic, they had like all online, so there was no dorming or anything for me and my family just to stay at home and learn. So I just enrolled into Albany because it was just going to be a lot cheaper because I did get scholarships and stuff too, which made it easier. And I just stay home.
Okay. Jake?
Yeah, so I actually applied to several colleges, and didn't really get into some of the ones that I was hoping to go to. So I kind of ended up at NYU by flipping a coin between my two final options. Something that was really important to me is I wanted to go to kind of a school that I thought reflects the world. So has, I can meet people from all different backgrounds, kind of connect with people that, aren't exactly like me. That was something that really stood out to me. And the other school that I was choosing between was kind of just everyone was in a frat, and that wasn't really, it was a very similar type of person. So, I ended up at NYU, and I think one of the things that really helped me make that decision though was just like going online and learning as much about the school as I could, but also speaking to current students. I think that's the most valuable thing that you can do, because you really kind of can't get that perspective anywhere else. And yeah, then I ended up at NYU.
Perfect. Following on that question, the following question is, what is like to live in college? And this is something that I always wanted to do, but my parents were like, no, you're not going away. You got to work. So I didn't go away. So Kevin, I think you're away in college, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you share with us what is that experience like?
Yeah. So for this year or last year?
I guess the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah. So last year was my freshman year, and freshmen have multiple options that they can choose in terms of which dorm building they want. And at my school, if you ask the upperclassmen, each building have like a certain culture within it or a certain reputation. So the dorm building I chose was one of the more social ones because I wanted to meet like a lot of people and just find a bunch of people to do work with or hang out with. And that's a big change from this year because currently I'm on campus, but I'm with a roommate who I met last year. So it's just us two, and we just do our work together on class.
Thank you. Alexis, I think you're away too.
Yes, I am. When I first started, like my freshman year, it was a lot. Living with someone who's not your family, like it was just a lot because everybody has their own preferences. Like, people like to stay up late on the phone. It's a whole lot And when it comes to the roommate process, that's a lot in itself. I've switched roommates a couple times. So living on campus is like a different experience, especially as the years go on. Like currently, I don't have a roommate, but the dorms were even a big change for me because it's a communal. Some of the dorms have communal where you all share with the floor. So it's like you'd have to walk down the hallway, that kind of thing. You have to adjust to that from high school because, you know, you're living at home, family versus people you don't know. And now I live as a senior, we have our own bathroom in here. So it's a little up and down, but I mean, I I learned a lot. I like living on campus. I don't think I would have liked being a commuter. It's just my preference, but I like the experience that you get because you have to deal with a lot of people in the future, whether you're living with a roommate when you move out or just overall, like you're gonna have to understand people differently. Keeping to yourself all the time isn't the best because you have to deal with people regardless. So my roommate experience and rooming experience is interesting.
Thank you. Jake, are you away or not?
Yes. So I have lived on campus for 3 years. So this will be my third year on campus. I really love living on campus. And it got me to be a much more independent person, which I like. I think that is something that, really helped me grow kind of outside of the academic sphere. And it was a really great way for me to meet people. I made a lot of my closest friends in my building. Sometimes I would just knock on my neighbor's door, and that's actually how I met two of my closest friends. So I think there's a huge kind of social experience that you can get from being on campus, and it's just been something that is really valuable to me. But I also have a lot of friends that are commuter students, and they still have an awesome experience. They're able to make friends, meet people, and kind of have a lot of the same experiences that I have living on campus. So obviously living on campus isn't, an option for everyone or that everyone would want. And you're still able to have like an amazing college experience, even if you're a commuter student.
Perfect. And thank you so much for kind of segueing into the next question. My next question will be for Greer. And speaking about, activities and how to stay active on campus, what does your particular college do to promote student involvement, extracurricular activities, and volunteering?
So I get a lot of emails from different clubs, like with Zoom links and stuff on how to get involved. And I see a bunch of flyers in my emails and stuff. So I just get involved like that way, because most clubs, you can't really meet in person still. So most of them are Zoom meetings anyway. So that's how I've been staying involved, at least. Yeah.
Okay. Alexis, what about you?
Well, before COVID, I mean, we still have a lot of clubs. We have a lot of involvement. We have a lot of student activities. We pretty much have every club you could think of. There's clubs that are divided, like Asian clubs, Irish step, all this different kind of stuff. LGBTQA kinds of alliance clubs, all those different things that are divided, but we also have things that come together. Like we have a multicultural center. We have all these things that we do together, things we do separate. We have BSU, Black Student Unions. We have Latinx ones. So we have a big mixed bag of stuff, including my step team, co-captain. Thank you. But before COVID, we did like a lot of fun stuff together. We did showcases and things like that. We did Sienna Fest, all those big events that bring us together as a school. And especially being that we're kind of small, we have like a big like family vibe for the most part. So it's very important to get involved. Even for commuters who come into those clubs, we even have a commuter club. We have literally everything. And now that it's, COVID going on, they try to keep us involved with things online. Like we used to do like movie nights. Now they have a link where you could watch the movies together. So they're trying to like navigate and switch it around. Like you guys can meet in small groups, or they'll do like, we'll meet online for this portion. And if things go well, then we'll try to like, integrate just going back to meeting together or spacing it out or practicing outside, whatever your club is. But For right now, it's turned into meetings. But before that, it was really great. And it's very important to be involved. It looks good on your resume, and it's just good for that social dynamic.
Kevin, what about you? Are you involved? How does your school engage students?
Mhm. Every semester, there's a student involvement fair where all the clubs go to the rec center to set up their booths. And since everything is remote now, this semester's fair was online. So each club had a Zoom call for anyone that was interested. And then the school's website would have like a list of all the clubs and all the calls you can join. So I would say I definitely joined a couple clubs. One club that I'm involved in a lot is SHIP, which is for the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. So within that, I found a good community of friends.
Very nice. Jake, what about you?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? I was trying to reply to something in the comments.
It's okay. I know the chat is also distracting for me. So the question is, what does your college do to promote student involvement, extracurricular activities, and volunteering?
Yes. Okay, so there is at NYU specifically, there's a thing called Welcome Week, and this year it was actually Welcome Month because of it being online, where basically the first 7 to 10 days after you get on campus, it is just 7 a.m. till like 1 a.m. of events, all day, free events all around New York City. So that is a way that they try to kind of get you involved. There's a club fair every semester where clubs reach out to you and they try to get you involved. And that is where I have found a lot of my friends through that kind of Welcome Week program, as well as through clubs. So I'm a member of my College Democrat Club and the Politics Society because I'm a politics student on campus. And so I met a lot of friends through that. We have like debates with the college Republicans on campus, which is always exciting. And so my school does a lot to kind of, present the opportunities and clubs that are available. But one thing I will say is, regardless of where you go to school, you have to make sure that you're putting yourself out there and that you're kind of engaging with those events, because every school that you go to, the way that you're going to get the best college experience is when you really immerse yourself and just, show up to every event, like say hi to your professor, talk to people in class, go to that club fair. That is how you're going to get the most out of it and how you're going to engage with clubs or organizations that really fit you and that really are going to give you a great experience.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is for those of you taking, or I guess all of you, taking online classes. Can you share your experience with us?
Oh, I'll go first. Not all of my classes are online. So I have some that I go to and some that I do online, but some of them switch during the week, like Tuesdays we meet in class, Thursdays we're online. So that switch has been hard, especially for the past 3, almost 4 years I've been going to class. I think a big thing is remembering that you have class online and remembering the assignments. But for those of you who had a year, whether you're in high school or college, had a year doing it online, the transition shouldn't be so bad. But for those of you who haven't, it may be difficult, but just make sure you stay organized. Pay attention to your assignments. It's very important that you stay organized. Time management, because it's online. Try to pay attention and not be on Instagram like I am. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I will tell you, I'm on Instagram or Snap. And the professor could be talking, but, just try to, stay attentive, answer the questions, participate, because that'll also be good when you're looking for recommendations. No matter what level you're at or where you are in your college experience, high school experience, make sure you still set yourself up to be in a good position. And you are going to need some of the notes that you don't think you need or need to pay attention to. Yes, you do. I'm a senior. Let me tell you, I wish I paid more attention. So being online is difficult, but it's doable as long as you stay on top of it and you are accountable.
Greer, would you like to go next?
So the online classes aren't bad for most of them. They're asynchronous, which means they just post work and there's not really Zoom meetings at all. Like it would just have to be optional, I guess. And I think my bio class is in person, but obviously I stay home. But she records lectures beforehand, so I can watch them like anytime I want to. And attendance isn't really mandatory because it's a 300-person class, so it's kind of vague. Yeah, I agree with Lexi. Like you really have to write down all the notes because I used to like watch lectures and be like, okay, I can skip this slide. Like I don't need this. And then there'd be like 5 questions on that one slide. And then the slides I wrote down had nothing to do with any of the questions. So it's really important to pay attention, stay engaged.
Absolutely. Jake?
Yeah, I have a lot of Zoom classes, so I think something that is helpful to me is kind of trying to stay on a routine and like a schedule, as it would be like, you know, if classes were in person, so that I can kind of try to get into a routine and do my work, you know, like on a normal schedule. I mean, like Lexi, I would be lying if I, you know, said I didn't spend a good amount of time on my phone when I'm in classes, but you know, I kind of did that in person classes sometimes too. So it's like, but yeah, I no, I think that it's definitely different. But teachers and students are both kind of getting used to it, and it's becoming easier, I think, over time. And just one thing that makes it more helpful is going to office hours if your professors offer it, and just trying to connect to people and really make the most out of it. It's definitely not as easy as in-person classes, but I still feel like I'm getting stuff out of it and learning stuff. Yeah.
Kevin?
I think similar to everyone else, I think now that classes are online, it definitely makes it harder, at least for me, to have the motivation to go to class. And that's just because it's like so easy to not click the Zoom link and just do something else instead. But thankfully, all my classes are being recorded and the slides are being posted. So for some of my classes, I just take notes off that rather than attending live lecture. But it's best to find how you learn and what works best for you.
Perfect. Oh, that's really great. And I agree with all of you. You know, being on your phone is super distracting. And then you have to go back and reread and redo all your notes because you wasn't paying attention. So pay attention, please pay attention. Our next question is a 2-part question. Please let me know if you want me to repeat it again. So the first part is, what do you do on your free time? And how do you manage your social life during COVID?
I can go first.
Okay, go.
So well, right now it's like an election season and I'm very immersed in politics. So I kind of try to, right now I work with like local progressive candidates. That's something that I'm doing in my free time to try to volunteer for them, make phone calls, that kind of thing. I am, you know, I tend to find that my social life matches kind of similarly to what I'm doing in my academic life. But I also spend a lot of time, you know, with my friends. We, you know, regardless of what, you know, the person in the White House is saying, New York is not a ghost town right now. There are lots of fun things that we do. We go to, you know, restaurants and things like that. And under normal circumstances, my school offers a lot of programs and things like that. So I would spend a lot of time at Broadway shows that the school would give free tickets to, and concerts around the city. But yeah, it's a lot of time that I just kind of spend with my friends. And but I also make sure that I keep some free time for things like getting my laundry done and doing my dishes, because if I don't schedule time for that, it will not happen. And during COVID, it's definitely different. I, you know, spend a lot more time on FaceTime than I do in person nowadays, but, you know, we're still making it work and kind of all getting through it together.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So for me, I have a few close friends who are in the same major as me, and we also have the same classes. So even though we're not together, we still go on a Zoom call and just hang out or do homework or whatever we're doing. We also started using Netflix Party so we could watch movies and stuff and rewatch Avatar. So I think in my free time when I'm just alone, actually I also go to club events for my school. And also when I'm just alone, I watch Netflix or something. Not really fun.
I guess that's all we can do now.
Yeah.
Grier, would you like to go next?
Same thing as Kevin. All I really do is watch Netflix, and I've been hanging out with a couple people local that still stay home. Their schools are online too, or they just decided to stay home. But other than that, I don't really talk to anyone. Oh wait, my clubs. I have a few friends.
Lexis, can you share with us?
Yes. So, I mean, I don't have as much free time as I used to because I decided to get an internship to go with what I want to do after I graduate. But in my free time, before COVID, there would be like, social events, parties and stuff like that. But I didn't really go out much. I like movie nights. I like calm nights, calm events. But most of my time I spend watching Netflix, and they came out with a lot of good shows. So I watch Netflix, try to spend some time organizing myself because I'm not super organized, but I know it's important. So I try to take some time out for that. So organizing, watching Netflix. I still do talk to some of my friends, but with COVID, it's a little, but it is important to stay social unless you're not a social person. But I mean, like, go with what you're comfortable with. But Netflix.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing, guys. I'm gonna pass it back to Jessica and see if there are any questions in the chat that you guys would like to answer. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, and stay in touch.
Yes, thank you guys for sharing your input. It's definitely very useful. Some of the questions you guys have already been addressing, but I guess one of the big ones is, did you guys take any AP classes or classes that gave you college credit, and would you recommend them in high school?
Yeah, so I took a lot of AP classes in my high school. I took a couple with college credits also. In terms of what schools are looking for, it kind of depends on what school that you're applying to. Certain schools, like some of the top schools like Harvard and Yale and those kind of schools are going to look to see that you're taking a rigorous kind of course load, and that you're engaging with the AP classes available. But a lot of schools are, every school is just looking to see that you're performing well, like to the best of your ability, regardless of what classes you're in. So it's much more important that you're taking a manageable course load, whether that be, no classes for college credit, some for college credit, some APs, and just doing well in those classes rather than trying to take every AP available and struggling, which is something that, I think a lot of us try to do, or something like that. And so it just is very important to take a manageable course load, and it depends on the school. So my school, I know it accepted some of my AP credits and accepted some of my college credits, but you can actually reach out and send an email to the admissions office. That's a great way to kind of get your name known for the admissions process, and actually ask them, which of these credits will potentially be transferred or accepted.
Yeah, that's definitely it. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will raise them. But we do have a program assessment for you guys to fill out. The link is in the chat. We're actually going to announce the prizes in a moment. So please, I'm just reading one comment. Okay, so please make sure you fill that out. But thank you to all our panelists for joining us today. We are definitely thankful that you came and that you've shared your insight and your perspective with us today. We are going to do this again next weekend with another set of students, so please come back for that as well. One question that came in that I deal with this still even after graduating college. How do you deal with procrastination? Alexis, let's start with you.
I feel attacked. How do I deal with procrastination? I feel like the solution to procrastination has to do a lot with discipline. You have to be very self-disciplined, which I still struggle with. I told you, Netflix and Instagram and those sort of things, those sort of distractors, you have to be self-disciplined and remind yourself that what you do now is going to affect what happens to you in the future. And that is a very important concept to grasp. What you do right now, what you decide to do, what you choose to do is going to affect your results. So, I mean, you have to keep a certain mindset with that as well. So how I deal with it, I make myself a schedule and try my best to stick to it. If I have to set alarms, I set alarms like, Lexi, what are you doing right now? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing right now? And I have to modify if I'm going to listen to that and myself, or if I'm just going to keep watching the next episode. So it's a lot about self-discipline, definitely.
All right. Anyone have anything to add from that perspective?
I think she said what
She
needed to be
covered it.
said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
second that completely.
I do the same thing.
Exactly.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Do any of you guys get scholarships that you'd like to share about?
I did. And I'm just gonna say really quick, not that I don't think I don't have any talents, but high school wise, like if your GPA is not the best, it's not like a 4.0, anything like that. I got a scholarship based off of things I've done in high school, and a little bit of my GPA, because it wasn't the worst, but it had a lot to do with my my letter, my personal statement, and things like that. So those things, make sure you have a strong personal statement and good recommendations, because that will help you a lot to get a good scholarship or a scholarship in general, not just based off merits. So I got mine based off those other things besides merits.
I also received a scholarship through the Fresh Dropout Scholarship Program, which is partnered with my high school. And also, like, my mom's company had a scholarship, so definitely there's scholarships everywhere to look for.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't receive any personally, but looking back, I realized that there are a lot of opportunities kind of outside of just the schools that you're applying to. There's a lot of these outside scholarships that a lot of people don't even know about. I had no idea until I got to college that these were available. So certainly just kind of look around, try to find these scholarships, because there's a ton of money that just kind of sits there waiting to go to students. And just make sure, I can't emphasize this enough, as someone who works in admissions, that all your financial aid documents are in on time. That's very, very important. So.
Absolutely. So we will end there. Thank you for joining us today. Let's announce these prize winners. Okay. 1 second. Can you see my screen? All right, so we have our prize winners, as you can see on the right-hand side, and we are so thankful that you guys were able to participate in the chat with us today and engage with our speakers. We'd also like to just highlight that we will be giving away raffles as well. That is going to be announced later, and we're going to be mailing you your gifts to the address that you put on the registration form. That's the same thing for the participation prize winners. We just wanted to thank you for joining us today and for being with us and engaging with us as much as possible. Come back next week for part 2 of this session, where we dig a little deeper with some other students and some other professionals who are here to give you advice and guidance on this entire process. So thank you, everyone, and have a great Saturday.